Hey you guys, welcome back to Tomes of Terror. This is my little book review series that I do. So here's another book that I completely found at random on Kindle Unlimited. This is by an author named L.M. Kaplin, and he is a writer from upstate New York. And the book that I'm discussing today, which is from 2024, so it's fairly new, it's called Mine, a Psychological Horror. I think this is his first full-length novel. Before this, it looks like he had a short story in an anthology, which was called Screams from the Ocean Floor, which sounds kind of awesome, by the way. I might have to get that. And he also published a collection of his own vampire short stories, which was called Fang Fiction. But like I said, I think this story, Mine, is his first full-length novel. And like I said, I picked it at random, as I do a lot of the books, just because, I don't know, I liked the fact that it was a psychological horror, because I was kind of in the mood for that, and I sort of liked the vibe of the cover. So again, and it worked out pretty good because this turned out to be pretty damn decent. So here's the story. So our main protagonist, who we see most of the story through, is a guy in his mid-30s, I think he's 35, and his name is Chandler Hendricks. Now, there isn't a huge amount of like backstory or flashbacks or anything like that about how he ended up in this kind of pathetic predicament that he's in. Honestly, there doesn't need to be. There's just kind of enough for you to get the gist. You know, it's like, suffice it to say that Chandler is very awkward. He's extremely introverted. He doesn't have any friends. And he's kind of like a little bit of an angry loser who hardly ever leaves the house. So he lives with his mom, it's her house, and his mom is actually bedridden. Like, mentally, she's still, like, sharp as a tack, you know what I mean? But physically, she has, like, all these illnesses and she can't really move around anymore, you know what I mean? So, obviously, Chandler is obliged to take care of her, and she doesn't have to be, but she's kind of a twant about it. Pretty much, like, criticizing everything that he does, which you're led to believe is something that she's done his entire life. So yeah, so even though Chandler is like kind of a sad sack and largely not that sympathetic and becoming even less sympathetic like as the story goes on, you can kind of feel bad for him and understand how he ended up the way he is because his mom just says terrible shit to him about how worthless he is like every opportunity she gets. And like I said, it's implied that she's been doing this to him his whole life, hence why he ended up the way he did. So the thing about it is she's such a bitch that you actually don't feel bad when Chandler takes little passive aggressive swipes at her and does little shit that, like, you know, makes him feel better, but she doesn't know about, you know what I mean? Because she's kind of the worst. So, pretty much the only bright spot in Chandler's kind of pitiful life is people watching, which sounds innocuous, doesn't it? But oh boy, does he go all in on this hobby, if you want to call it that. So he has this whole daily routine where he like moves from window to window in his house, like at various times of the day, depending on which of the neighbors is going to work or coming home or doing whatever. And he's even got binoculars to spy on women who are undressing in other houses on the block, because of course he does. That just goes with the territory, doesn't it? So, I mean, his daily routine is basically like get up, give his mom like her medicine and breakfast or whatever. He goes to down to his basement man cave and like jerks off to porn. And then he has his whole schedule of like watching the various neighbors until it's, you know, time to give his mom food again. He has all the neighbors' routines memorized too, and he knows all kinds of personal shit about them, like either from spying on them directly or kind of like looking up stuff on the internet. Now, he likes pretty much watching everybody in the neighborhood, but he does have a very, very favorite person to watch, and that is the beautiful Samantha, who lives next door to him. Now, she's about his age, so in her 30s, and he has become convinced, that she's his soulmate. Problem is, she is already married to a cop named Kevin, and they have an adorable 5-year-old son named Dylan. Now, Chandler is always kind of trying to be slick, like he'll go out to get the mail, like right when Samantha is bringing Dylan home from daycare or something like that, so he can try to insinuate himself into an interaction. And again, it's implied that he's been doing this so much that Samantha's getting kind of sick of it and creeped out, so she basically like has no qualms about just saying, hey, like straight up leave me alone, you know what I mean? You can't do this. And her husband, Kevin, has absolutely no patience for Chandler at all, like threatening him with violence, like straight up, because like I said, he's a cop, if he so much as sets foot on their property, like ever again. But because Chandler is so intent on watching everybody in the neighborhood, he knows something about Kevin, though. Kevin is horribly, horribly abusive to his wife. Chandler has been able to hear like the screaming matches and like him slapping her around and stuff like that, like coming from their house at night. And it's revealed like later on that it's pretty much not a secret in the entire neighborhood that shit is going on over there, because they're not quiet about it. You know what I'm saying? Now, because of this, Chandler is convinced that all he has to do is just be there for Samantha, and she will eventually realize that Kevin is a giant gaping asshole and that Chandler is really the man for her. The thing about it is that the first part of that statement is undeniably true. Kevin is a big giant gaping asshole. But the second thing doesn't follow, and Chandler doesn't really seem to understand that too well. So as the story goes on, it starts to become abundantly clear that Chandler is losing his grip on reality. Let's call it that. And he kind of just starts spiraling further and further into his delusions that Samantha is just waiting for him to come and rescue her. You know what I mean? Like a knight on a white horse. At about a quarter of the way through the book, Chandler does something very bad, which kind of seems to act as a catalyst for him kind of going full steam ahead on the crazy train. Now, from that point, the title of the book, which is Mine, will make a lot more sense, as Chandler starts to genuinely believe, mild spoiler alert, that Samantha and Dylan are actually his family. So yeah, overall, this was like a really good, like it was very fast paced, like a really compelling read. It really kind of sucked me in immediately and got me hooked all the way through. Like I read the whole thing in a single sitting, like in a single evening, just in a couple of hours. And it's not a short book. It's about 217, I think 217 pages, something around there. But yeah, I really didn't, once I started, I didn't want to put it down. I did have a couple of minor quibbles, like with the writing style. I feel like it was a little too straightforward, if that's not a weird thing to say. It's a little bit too tell, don't show. You know what I mean? I think that was the problem I had with it. But it didn't bother me after a while. I kind of got used to the vibe of it, so it wasn't really bothering me. And I will say that the way that it's presented, like just the very straightforward, no-nonsense way that it's written, it does make it a very extremely easy read. Hence why I probably read it like in a couple of hours, you know what I mean? Also not a huge fan, and I've brought this up in like other books before, and a lot of writers seem to do this, and I don't really know why. Mostly the book is from the perspective of Chandler, but sometimes the perspective would change from Chandler to another character without much warning, like without like changing a section or changing a chapter or something like that. Like it wasn't confusing. I wasn't confused at any point like what was going on, but I always just find that odd. And it's not wrong necessarily. It's just something that kind of gets on my nerves. So, but like I said, it's not just this book that does that. I've had other books do that too. And it kind of drives me crazy, but maybe other people aren't bothered by it. I don't know. And it didn't really happen much in it. So it was just kind of a minor criticism, you know, so don't get like, I'm not, you know, mad about it or anything like that. Now I will further note that there is something of a twist ending, if you want to call it that. Now I admit I did not see it coming, but I'm not sure if it was sufficiently set up though. Like in other words, since we're seeing most of the story from Chandler's POV, he basically has to withhold information from the reader in order for there to be a twist. You know what I'm saying? It's not a big deal. And, you know, the twist did surprise me. So I was like, what? Holy shit. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't even occur to me. And honestly, in fact, I was like so intrigued by the way this ended. It ended in a way I did not expect. I will say that very much. And I actually wouldn't mind a sequel to this, to see what happens next, you know what I mean? Because there's a whole lot of interesting directions that this story could go in from that point. So yeah, all in all, I liked this novel quite a bit. It was really entertaining, very briskly paced. Like I said, I couldn't put it down. I just sat and read the whole thing like in one sitting. And the character of Chandler was, you know, very well delineated. It seems like I saw some other reviewers had a lot more sympathy for him than I did, like as a character, but I still found him interesting enough, even though he's a delusional monster. Like, as I mentioned, the way that his mother treated him made it pretty obvious why he turned out the way he did, so you can empathize with him in that regard. But as a character, as an adult, now he's not all that sympathetic, or I didn't find him all that sympathetic. But he was still like a really interesting character, and it was a really interesting story, and it was kind of interesting to see things from his perspective, you know what I mean? Because he was obviously not right in the head. So I would definitely recommend this to, if you like psychological thrillers or stalker type stories, especially ones told from a point of view of an unlikable or unreliable narrator, then you'll probably dig this. And if this is just L.M. Kaplan's first novel, I definitely think he's probably got a bright future in horror and thrillers ahead of him for sure. And that will do it for this Tomes of Terror. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please remember, like, share, subscribe, and comment if you did. And I will see you guys again on the next one. Bye.